Hi, AP Micro students. I am just here today to go over some things that you're probably going to see in your studies this week in AP Micro. These are some things that are commonly missed, and you may have already covered these if you were working ahead. And if so, you can watch this and go back and if you need to earn some points back. But if you haven't completed Unit 2 yet, these are some things that you are going to encounter that I find students often miss or misunderstand. So keep in mind that we're talking about demand and supply this week, and this comes in Chapter 3 for the 20th edition, which is what I'm working off of here on this PowerPoint. But you may have a different edition. If so, should be the same chapter. Or same title of the chapter, which would be something to do with demand and supply. So, a couple things I want to go over really quick. First of all, your demand curve is downward sloping. You looked at different reasons why that occurs, things like the substitution effect, things like the inverse relationship between price and quantity. But this is our basic demand curve. So we've got two axes. You've got price on your y axis, you've got quantity on your x axis. Keep in mind these two are dependent variables, which means when one changes, the other changes. And that leads us to one of the most misunderstood concepts in the entire course. And that is, what is the difference between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand? Sounds like the same thing, not the same thing. So as you look at this graph, keep in mind that each of these points on the graph here represent a quantity demanded at a certain price. So at a price of $5, our quantity demanded, if I pull it down to the x-axis, is 10. If my price changes to $4, the point on the curve where I'm at changes as well, the quantity demanded on that curve. So at $4, only 20 is demanded. When we're talking about a change in quantity demanded, we're talking about a movement between points on the curve, a movement from here to here, as opposed to an entirely different set of coordinates that would draw an entirely new demand curve. So here's the difference. First of all, a change in quantity demanded is caused by a change in price. So we've got those two dependent variables. Remember, you've got quantity down here on your x-axis, you've got price. If quantity changes, it's because price changed, because those two are dependent variables. And we're talking about a movement along a curve or a movement between points on a curve. Changes in demand, on the other hand, um, require us to draw an entirely new demand curve. So that change, for example, would be an increase in demand. What that means is something has changed, and the demand shifters are determinants of demand. That means more people desire to purchase that item at every single price. And so every single one of the quantities change, which means that we move from D1 to D2. That's a rightward shift or an increase in demand. On the other hand, we could see a decrease in demand, a leftward shift moving towards zero. That would mean that fewer people want to buy that item at each and every price. In other words, the demand moves towards zero or decreases. Why does this happen? Well, your book outlines it on page 59 if you got the 20th edition. Unfortunately, I don't have access to other editions here at home, so I can't tell you exactly what page you'll find this on. But whatever chapter talks about demand, you should find something that looks like this. So we are dealing with 5 determinants or shifts in demand, or things that shift demand. You've got change in buyers' tastes. This is sometimes known as tastes and preferences. You know, what's trendy, what's new, what's now. Change in the number of buyers, which refers to a population change. So that could be that the entire population changed, or that could be that a portion of the population changed. Like, for example, we have increasing numbers of Latino or Latinx people in the United States. And so if there are products that group of people buy in greater or lesser quantities, we could see demand for those types of products change due to a change in the number of buyers or a change in the demographics of our population. Change in income refers to how much money people make. So if average household income goes up, generally demand for normal goods will go up. If income goes down, on the other hand, then demand for normal goods will go down. Demand for inferior goods will go up. So that's where the normal and inferior goods come into play. Change in price of related goods is referring to change in price of one item will affect demand for the other. That could be complements, goods that go together, or complementary goods. That could be substitutes, or goods that are used in place of each other. The last one is a change in consumer expectations, and this is based on what we expect to happen in the future. It's a very important determinant because, for example, with the whole COVID crisis, people have been more conservative as far as what they're purchasing because they're not sure what's going to happen in the future. If the government and the media can inspire confidence, that will help the economy improve, and the opposite is also true. So if any of those 5 things change, we're looking at changes in demand, a shift in the entire demand curve. So keep that in mind. Change in price changes quantity demanded. Changes in these 5 determinants will shift the entire demand curve. Same thing is true for supply. So a change in price will change quantity supplied. This time it's a direct relationship. As price goes up, quantity goes up, and vice versa. Again, a change in price, change in price will move you between points on this curve. So if price goes from $3 to $4, we have more people that are willing to supply it because they're running businesses, and they're willing to offer more at higher prices because it increases their profit margin. If, however, one of the determinants of supply shifts, we'll see either an increase in supply. Increase in supply would be a rightward shift because we're moving away from zero. That means that more people are willing to offer at every price, and they're willing to take a lower price. We can also see a decrease in supply, which is a leftward shift moving towards zero. That means fewer people are willing to supply it at every price, and they're demanding a higher price in order to sell. And again, there's your change in quantity supplied, movement between points on the curve. 5 supply shifters that your book identifies: your resource or input prices. So when we're talking about land, labor, capital, those things that go into making finished goods, if those prices change, that can change supply. If the prices go up, your profitability goes down, and therefore when resource or input prices go up, supply will decrease. The opposite is also true. If gas prices, for example, go down, transportation costs go down, and businesses are willing to supply more, or supply will increase. Taxes and subsidies have to do with government interventions in the markets. Generally, when taxes are placed on things or taxes are increased on things, supply will decrease. When subsidies are placed on items, that's to encourage businesses to sell more of those items or make more of those items available for sale. And so subsidies will cause increases in supply. Technological change is another. Producer expectations, just like consumers, producers are looking at markets and making decisions about what to do based on what they expect will happen. The last one is the number of sellers. So how many people are able to sell that item? If it's increasing, if more businesses are opening that sell that item, you'll see an increase in supply. And the opposite is also true. If, when Blockbuster started closing down all its stores, we saw a decrease in supply for DVDs and VHS tapes because there were fewer people selling them. And we're going to stop there. I will talk next week about market equilibrium, what you're encountering there. But key thing to keep in mind: difference between change in demand, change in quantity demanded, change in supply, change in quantity supplied. There's one more example I want to go through, and I'm also going to post another video where I do an example of a problem that you'll encounter. Identifying changes in price and quantity with demand and supply shifts can sometimes be tricky. So look for that other video where I do an example problem for you. In this video, though, I still want to cover the supply questions assignment number 5. So this is a question that often trips students up. I'm not going to go through the whole thing and give you all the answers, but I'm going to give you a couple things to consider as you get started. So this question, again, is found in the supply questions assignment 5 in your content. question number 8 says, now, using the information from the previous question, how will those same changes affect the overall supply of friendship bracelets? Answers can be used more than once. So, what you have to do is look at each one of those scenarios and determine what you think will happen with that, or what you think that item will cause to happen. So the cost of labor to produce bracelets decreases. So keep in mind, if we're talking about the determinants of supply, let's go back here. These are our 5 determinants of supply. We said if resource or input prices change, that's going to shift to the supply curve. So the cost of labor to produce bracelets decreases. If I'm a business owner, that's going to make my costs go down. Do you think that will increase my supply or cause me to decrease my supply or cause no change in my supply? That's what you're doing here on question number 8. On question number 7, I want to cover this one as well. It says, suppose you are a producer of friendship bracelets. How would the following events affect your or the market's willingness and ability to supply friendship bracelets? Match the event on the left with the proper determinant on the right. So keep looking at this first one. The price of friendship bracelets decreases. Remember, what does price cause a change in? Does price cause a change in supply? Does the entire curve shift when price changes? Or does price just cause a movement along the supply curve, movement between 2 points on a curve? So keep that in mind. One of your options is this does not affect supply, meaning that you could say, well, the price doesn't cause a change in supply, it causes a change in quantity supplied. A second one here, the cost of labor to produce bracelets decreases. So again, your resource or input prices go down. Does that cause you to increase your supply or decrease your supply? Which one of those determinants is related to that question? For example, is it government intervention, cost of inputs, etc.? So keep in mind that's how you're going to answer each one of those questions. Compare it back to those inputs or resource or determinants of supply that I talked about on the other slide. Again, I'm posting another example where I show you how to shift curves and analyze those. So make sure to watch for that video. And as always, if you've got more questions or need more help, feel free to call, text, or email me. Have a great day.